Her son tried to list her house for sale while she was still living in it. Elaine Rutherford, 71, didn't argue. She documented. Graham, her only child, thought being blood gave him ownership. By sundown, his name was stripped from the deed, the trust, and the legacy. She'd been erased before, as a wife, as a mother, but not this time. This time, she left a paper trail that ended with her name alone. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The overhead fluorescents buzzed like flies in the emergency room. Elaine sat in a wheelchair just beyond the intake desk, her coat folded neatly in her lap, her late ex-husband's wristwatch resting quietly in her palm. The band was worn thin, the gold dulled by time and skin. She traced its edge with her thumb, a reflex she didn't know she still had. A sliding glass door hissed open. Graham strode in, all efficient energy and pressed wool. His wife, Kelsey, trailed just behind him in heels too high for a hospital floor. He didn't look at Elaine. Not once. He walked straight to the nurse's station, voice clipped. "She was brought in an hour ago. Name's Elaine Rutherford. She's just my dad's first wife." Elaine didn't flinch, not outwardly, but something inside her ribcage compressed, a silent folding in like a hand gripping itself too tightly. She looked up slowly. The nurse behind the counter glanced toward her, uncertain, then nodded and clicked at her keyboard. Vitals were stable at intake, the nurse offered. No loss of consciousness. She insisted she didn't want anyone called, but... "Good," Graham cut in. "I'll speak to the doctor." He was already turning. Kelsey touched his arm, low and intimate. "She's not your responsibility, babe." Elaine's hearing had dulled over the years, but not that much. Her fingers curled around the watch, its once weighty presence now reduced to an anchor made of memory and irony. The doctor arrived, a young woman with an overworked face and the calm tone of someone used to tense family dynamics. "Ms. Rutherford, are you still feeling lightheaded?" she asked. Elaine's voice was soft but precise. "Number, I'd like to go home now. We'd feel better running one more." "I've signed the release forms," Elaine said, lifting the clipboard from her lap. Her handwriting was steady, tight. No hesitation. The doctor looked to Graham. "She lives alone," he said, finally acknowledging her presence with a glance. Clinical, not familial. "She shouldn't." Elaine turned her head toward him very slightly. "I've lived alone for 23 years, she said. "I'll manage another night." Kelsey's phone buzzed. She turned away to check it. Graham looked annoyed, then irritated, then something Elaine had no name for. Maybe the face of a man who had already erased someone and was being asked to squint them back into focus. The nurse approached with a discharge folder. Elaine reached for it calmly, tucked the paperwork into her tote, and adjusted her scarf. The doctor gestured toward the back exit, offering to assist her to the rideshare drop-off. "I'll walk her out," Graham offered finally. Elaine's eyebrows lifted, just a fraction. "No need," she said, "but thank you, Graham." The silence that followed wasn't long, but it held weight. The kind of weight that presses into bone, that can't be undone later with flowers or calls or overdue apologies. Kelsey coughed, clearly ready to leave. "Do you want us to—" Elaine turned toward the door. "You've both done enough," she said, the edge of a smile in her voice. Not kind, not bitter, just final. She wheeled herself forward, declining the nurse's offer of help. With each slow push, the hum of the building seemed to grow quieter, as if the very walls had stopped listening. Outside, the evening had turned sharp with cold. Her breath clouded the air as she stood, slowly, steadily, then took the handle of her small overnight bag and began the long walk to the curb. Her phone buzzed once, a text. From her bank. Withdrawal attempt blocked, joint savings account. Elaine looked at the screen. The corner of her mouth moved. Not a smile, something colder. She tucked the phone away, tightened her scarf, and stepped into the darkness. Inside her palm, the old watch kept ticking. Elaine let the front door swing closed behind her, the soft click of the latch swallowed by silence. The house smelled like lemon oil and dust, familiar but not warm. The porch light cast a long shadow behind her, and the locked deadbolt sounded louder than usual. She hung her coat on the brass hook near the door, then paused with her hand still touching the sleeve. The watch slipped from her fingers and landed gently on the entry table. She stared at it a moment longer, then turned toward the hallway without removing her shoes. The living room, perfectly arranged and untouched, stared back like a museum. She passed through it without pause, heading straight for the bedroom. Inside the walk-in closet, she reached past a row of cardigans to an old cedar chest pressed against the back wall. Her knees ached as she knelt, but she moved with purpose. From beneath the folded linens, she pulled a hardback binder, deep green leather, worn around the corners. Legacy planning, private, was embossed in fading gold. The tabs were still crisp. She had labeled them meticulously: 401k, IRA, life insurance, medical POA, last will old. She carried it to the desk near the window and opened it under the amber pool of a small lamp. Outside, the neighbor's porch light flickered like a warning. It took only minutes to confirm what she hadn't thought about in years. Graham Rutherford was listed more than once in black ink: co-beneficiary, secondary, emergency contact. Her jaw set, but she didn't speak, not aloud. That would be giving him something. Space in her air. Instead, she reached for a small metal box in the bottom drawer, removed a key taped beneath it, and padded down the hall to the linen closet. Inside, behind the old humidifier she never used, sat a narrow steel safe. She entered the code, still her wedding anniversary, stupidly, and the lock clicked open. She pulled out 2 file folders and a velvet envelope. Inside, notarized originals of the policies, each one bearing her signature and Graham's name in a younger, more hopeful script. Her breath hitched. Flashback. She was standing in the bursar's office at Emerson College. Her hair was shorter then, dyed too dark. The woman behind the glass said, "We can't release his transcript without the remaining balance." Elaine took out a checkbook. Her hands were shaking. Graham had wanted to transfer, said the new program was a better fit. His father had just shrugged and asked if he had a part-time job yet. She wrote the check, $5,000. "He's still a kid," she'd muttered to herself as she tore it from the pad. Now Elaine held the folder tighter, not out of nostalgia, out of calculation. How many times had she said yes when it wasn't returned? And how many yeses had turned into obligations? She closed the folder with care, as if sealing something in. Then she retrieved a yellow legal pad from her desk drawer and began a list in firm, slanted handwriting. Vanguard retirement account, Liberty Mutual Life Insurance, State Farm Term Plan, Prudential IRA, Revised Medical POA, remove Graham from all her hand stilled. A thought formed, clear as a bell ringing from the back of the house. He thought I'd forget, or maybe he was counting on it. She rose, returned to the closet, and replaced the cedar chest precisely where it had been. The house was still silent, but it no longer felt empty. In the kitchen she brewed tea, not for comfort but for clarity, and leaned against the counter while the kettle hissed. The steam curled toward her face. She didn't move. Then her phone buzzed on the counter. A new message from Graham. "Need to talk. ASAP. There's a lot you don't understand." She didn't reply. She simply reached for the folder again, eyes narrowing at the signature on the beneficiary form. It was dated 6 months ago, after their last fight. The downtown office building smelled faintly of paper and lavender disinfectant. Elaine stepped off the elevator with the measured pace of someone who no longer rushed for anyone. Her coat was buttoned all the way up. The folder in her hand was thick with documentation, and she held it like a courtroom exhibit. Madeline's name was etched on the frosted glass door in serif gold. Madeline Corrigan, Elder Estate Law and Transitions. The waiting room was hushed and minimal. Blonde wood, navy cushions, not a single family photo in sight. "Ms. Rutherford," the receptionist said, standing. "She's ready for you." Elaine walked in without hesitation. Madeline stood from behind her desk. Late 40s, sharp navy suit, dark hair pulled back in a low bun. No fuss, no small talk. That's why Elaine liked her. "I read your message. You brought originals?" Madeline gestured toward the chair across from her. Elaine nodded, lowered herself into the seat with a soft exhale, and placed the folder between them like a contract waiting to be broken. "He's still on 5 of them," she said. "Some dated more recently than I remembered." Madeline flipped through the pages with brisk efficiency. Life insurance, 2 IRAs, retirement, medical directive. Yes, this is still active. Elaine crossed her ankles tightly. "He doesn't need my protection anymore. He's taken enough." Madeline paused at a page. "This signature. Here. You sure you didn't?" "I didn't," Elaine said flatly. "I haven't touched that file in years." There was a beat of silence as Madeline laid the folder flat and picked up a pen. "Well, then we start here." She turned a document toward Elaine. "Name removal. Beneficiary change. We'll notarize before you leave, and I'd strongly recommend we build out a living trust this time." Elaine looked at her. "I thought that was for the very wealthy." "It's for the very smart," Madeline said without blinking. "A will can be contested. A trust can't. You'll have full control now and after." Elaine's fingers curled over the pen, but she didn't sign just yet. Instead of adding someone else, "Can I name an organization?" Madeline nodded. "Absolutely. Do you have one in mind?" Elaine hesitated. Her gaze drifted toward the window, where 2 pigeons fluttered against the city sky. "Yes," she said at last. "There's a non-profit I've followed for years. They give transitional housing to older women who've left unsafe homes, quiet places, second starts." Madeline's mouth curved slightly, but not quite into a smile. "That's an excellent beneficiary. Do you know their legal name?" Elaine reached into her purse and pulled out a folded printout. "Already checked." They got to work. The room filled with the scratch of pens, the clicking of keys. Paper shifted. Authority solidified. As Madeline drafted the framework for the trust, she asked softly, "Do you want him to be notified when these changes are finalized?" Elaine looked down at the signed forms before her, her name in deliberate black ink, a signature that no longer tethered itself to anyone else. "No," she said. "He'll find out the same way I did, after trying to take something that isn't his." Madeline nodded once. A silence settled between them, not awkward but earned. Elaine sat back in the chair, spine straight, palms flat against her knees. There was a tightness in her chest, but it didn't hurt, not yet. "Do you want to include a statement?" Madeline asked, flipping open the digital intake form. "Something personal to attach to the trust's purpose?" Elaine thought for a moment. Her voice was calm when it came. "Yes, just 1 line." Madeline positioned her fingers on the keys. "Go ahead." Elaine met her eyes and said, "He'll learn I was always the owner of my own story." The keyboard clacked gently as Madeline typed. "Perfect." Elaine stood slowly, collecting her coat and folder. She had never felt lighter. As she reached the door, her phone buzzed. Another message. "I need access to the savings again. It's serious this time. Call me." She didn't look back, just pressed delete. Elaine sat at the kitchen table, the early morning light slicing through the blinds like judgment. A cup of black coffee steamed beside a yellow notepad scrawled with dates, account names, and red underlines. Her phone rested face up beside it, screen dark. She didn't need to read Graham's message again. She'd already deleted it from memory. Instead, she reached for the landline. No hold music. Just the direct dial to her private banker, a number she hadn't used in over a decade. "Ms. Rutherford," the voice answered smoothly, surprised. "This is Elise. I'm with Keypoint Financial's Trust Services now. How can I assist?" Elaine's tone was clear, dry. "I'd like to place a full hold on my joint savings account ending in 2301, effective immediately." A pause. See, may I ask if this is due to suspicious activity?" Elaine didn't hesitate. "There was an attempted withdrawal last night. I did not authorize it. That account was opened for my son when he was 17. I no longer wish for him to have access." Another pause, this one longer. "Your power of attorney on file is still active," Elise confirmed, voice now lower. "Would you like to revoke his access fully or just freeze transactions for now?" Elaine picked up her coffee and took a slow sip. "Fully," she said. Close the joint account. Move all funds to my personal money market account ending in 4529. The sound of keyboard tapping filled the silence between them. I'll need voice confirmation on one more item, Elise said gently. Was this account meant for long-term support or inheritance? Elaine's laugh was low and humorless. It was meant for groceries. In 2003, before he decided I was a relic. The clicks resumed. Understood. I'll have a confirmation email sent within the hour. Is there anything else I can assist you with today? Elaine looked out the window, at the sycamore branches bending just slightly in the wind. Then she said, "Send me a notarized statement showing the new balance. I want a paper trail." She hung up before the woman could answer. Her fingers lingered over the notepad. She flipped it to a clean page and wrote in neat cursive, "Savings. Closed trust. Active access. Mine." She leaned back in the chair, breathing steadily now. Flashback. The bank lobby smelled like copier toner and cheap cologne. Graham was 17, with braces and a track hoodie half-zipped. He slouched in the leather chair, checking his phone as the manager typed. Elaine had signed the initial deposit slip for $1,000. "It's just so you can learn to manage your own money," she'd told him. "You'll need to contribute for books this fall." He'd barely looked up. Whatever. But when they handed him the temporary debit card, his face, shifted, just slightly. That flash of control, the thrill of access. Back then, she mistook it for pride. Now, Elaine tucked the flashback away like an old photograph. Seen, understood, put back in the drawer. She moved to the hallway desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. A small box of checks rested beneath a sheaf of tax files. She flipped it open and pulled the register. When she reached the last page, she tore it out and wrote at the bottom in block letters, "Do not forget what this cost you." She folded the paper and slipped it into the checkbook cover. A reminder, a record, a quiet line in her private ledgers. The doorbell rang. Unexpected. She rose, straightened her blouse, and checked the camera feed on her phone. A delivery. Just flowers. She opened the door slowly. A glass vase sat neatly on the welcome mat. Calla lilies. No note. She stared at them for a long time, then bent, picked them up, and carried them to the kitchen sink. With practiced ease, she turned the faucet and drowned the blooms one by one. Elaine stood at the sink long after the water stopped running. The lilies floated limply, their white petals bruising against the steel basin. She didn't reach for them. Let them drown. The business card had disintegrated slowly beneath the faucet. Just enough remained, Graham Rutherford in navy script, and below it, blurred ink that once read, "Financial Consultant." The irony stung. She dried her hands, walked calmly to her desk, and powered on her laptop. The withdrawal alert still sat in her inbox like a smoke alarm she'd silenced but hadn't uninstalled. She opened a blank email and began to type. Subject: Request for access to Graham Rutherford. Attachment: IMG_7311.png. Graham, numerus clausus E. She clicked the attachment icon and inserted the screenshot. The blocked transaction log from Keypoint Financial with the words "Unauthorized access attempt. User GR flagged." She stared at the cursor for a moment, then added a second sentence. "That money was never yours. Now it never will be." She hit send. Less than 5 minutes later, her phone rang. The sound broke through the stillness like a thrown glass. She picked it up, saw his name, and answered without hesitation. "What the hell, Mom?" His voice came through tight, agitated, not concerned, cornered. Elaine said nothing at first. She let the silence do what it does best. Swell. "Why would you block me from it?" he barked. "You're not even using half of that account. That money was meant for both of us." "You said so." "No," she said simply. "I didn't. And even if I had, intentions are not contracts." "You've always been dramatic," he snapped. "Overreacting. That money's half mine." Elaine tilted her head slightly, her voice even. "It never was. And now it never will be." On the other end of the line, she heard the sharp inhale he always took when losing control. He used to do it as a boy, before slamming doors or yelling into pillows. Some patterns didn't fade, they just changed clothes. "You've got lawyers involved now?" he asked, spitting the word like a curse. "I have clarity involved now," she corrected, "and I don't owe you anything. Not access, not explanation." He went quiet for just a second. Then, "This is elder abuse. You're not thinking straight. I could call someone. Get a competency eval if I wanted." Elaine smiled, even if he couldn't see it. It wasn't a kind smile. "You should have read the footer on that screenshot. The date stamp. That's the same day I renewed my legal and medical power of attorney, 1 hour before your little attempt." The line crackled. She pictured him, red-faced and pacing, already Googling elder law loopholes from his office. "This isn't over," he said, voice lower now, threatening in the way of men who've never been truly told no. Elaine's eyes drifted to the window, where birds pecked at the feeder she'd refilled that morning. Light poured across the oak floors in broken slats. "It's over for you," she said. "You just don't feel it yet." She hung up. For a moment, the house seemed to breathe around her, like it had been holding its own lungs tight, waiting to see what kind of woman she'd be. Elaine moved deliberately. She pulled out her estate ledger and made a note beneath her previous entries. Graham called, confirmed entitlement, threatened competency challenge, next step, medical certification. Then, as if conjured by the next beat in her resolve, her landline rang again. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. A moment later, the message played through the machine. "Hi, Ms. Rutherford. This is Dr. Levinson's office. Your wellness appointment has been moved up. We can see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Please confirm." Elaine pressed the button to save the message, then stood, stretched, and walked to her bedroom. At the top of her closet, she reached for a locked box. Inside it, her passport, birth certificate, and a sealed envelope marked "in case he tries." She set it gently on her nightstand. Elaine flips the power dynamic. A quiet war turns legal. The receptionist at Dr. Levinson's office barely glanced up before smiling. "Ms. Rutherford, he's running on time today. Go ahead back. Room 3. Elaine gave a polite nod and walked past the waiting room of sleepy retirees and new mothers. The office smelled faintly of rubbing alcohol and citrus, clean but lived in. She moved slowly but with purpose, her leather folder tucked under one arm like a weapon no one else could see. Dr. Levinson entered the room 5 minutes later, white coat half-buttoned, glasses slipping slightly. "Elaine, you're still sharper than most of my interns. What's the occasion?" "I need a full cognitive evaluation," she said, placing the folder on the exam table. "Standard tests, and I'd like it notarized." He paused, blinking. "Any concerns I should know about?" "Not mine," she said. "My son's." That stopped him. "Ah." Elaine crossed her legs, hands folded neatly in her lap. "He's threatening to file a competency challenge. I'd like to preempt the fiction." Levinson nodded slowly, already reaching for the tablet. "Well then, let's prove you're a hell of a lot more competent than the people wasting your time." The testing took 40 minutes. Elaine answered every memory prompt without hesitation, completed the serial 7s in a voice as steady as her pulse. She even cracked a joke during the clock drawing segment. "Don't worry, I know which way time goes." When it was over, Levinson reviewed the score and whistled softly. "Perfect results. No red flags. Want me to write that in bolder ink?" "Yes," she said. "And notarized. I'll cover the fee." Back home that afternoon, she slid the certified document into the sealed envelope labeled "in case he tries." Then she picked up her phone and called Madeline. "Send the cease and desist," Elaine said before pleasantries could begin, "and include language around financial coercion and undue influence. He's made verbal threats." "Done," Madeline replied. "Do you want it served formally?" "Email. For now. I want the paper trail clean." Madeline paused. "You should also know, I spoke with HOA counsel. If Graham shows up again without permission, you're eligible to file a nuisance interference claim under their harassment clause. Want me to draft it?" "Yes," Elaine said. "And I want cameras installed before the weekend, the kind with a time-stamped cloud backup. If he's going to play games, we'll keep score." That night, Elaine sat at her kitchen table with the same yellow legal pad and began a new heading. "If he comes back, Cameras installed, cease and desist delivered, mental capacity certified, trust completed, joint account closed, lawyer retained. She stopped mid-list and tapped her pen twice against the margin. She wasn't angry anymore, not exactly. It was cleaner than that now. Focused. Her doorbell rang. Elaine didn't move. Instead, she checked the security app on her phone. A man stood at the gate, a courier, navy windbreaker, clipboard in hand. She buzzed the intercom. "Ms. Rutherford, I have a delivery requiring signature." She opened the door cautiously. He handed her a flat cardboard envelope. No return address. She signed, then waited until she was back inside to open it. Inside, a printed letter. Typed. The font too neat, the tone too thin. "I don't know what stories you've been telling people, but this isn't how families handle things. I just want a conversation, not all this drama. Don't make it worse." No signature. But the watermark said, Rutherford Financial Group. Elaine folded it in half, placed it beside the cease and desist draft, and wrote in the corner, "Implied threat number 2, logged." She rose, walked to her office safe, and added the new note to her personal file titled 2023, Containment Protocol. As she locked it again, her phone vibrated. Motion detected. Side entrance, 9:43 p.m. Elaine pulled up the footage. Graham's car, idling in the alley. Elaine locks down her home, her rights, and the narrative itself. Elaine didn't sleep. She spent most of the night in the den with the lights low and the security feed glowing across her laptop screen. Graham's car had idled for 7 minutes, long enough to feel like a test. He never got out, just sat with the headlights off, engine humming in the dark like a threat wearing a seatbelt. At 6:03 a.m., she called Madeline. "You're up early," Madeline answered, a yawn audible through the line. Elaine didn't waste time. "I need a title search, and I want a real estate attorney on the call." Madeline cleared her throat. "Walk me through it." Elaine described the alley surveillance footage, then the courier envelope with no return name, and finally, her discovery at 4:17 a.m. while checking the county's public real estate portal. Her home had been listed, not for sale, yet, but as transitional inventory, private negotiation possible. The listing date was 2 days ago. No realtor license number, just a vague shell site link that redirected to Rutherford Financial Group's advisory page. "I'm the only name on the deed," Elaine said, "since 2002. Madeline cursed softly. "And you never authorized a listing. Not even a whisper of one." By 7:15 a.m., they were on a 3-way Zoom with a real estate lawyer named Shay Patel. Young, sharp, already reviewing the screen-shared documents Elaine had scanned overnight. "This isn't just a fraudulent listing," Shay said. "It's predatory leverage. If he circulated this to lenders or investors, it could trigger a soft foreclosure check even if it goes nowhere." Elaine sat straighter in her armchair. "I want every record flagged and frozen. I want this scrubbed from the database before the weekends." "We'll start by refiling your deed certification and adding a fraud alert at the county level," Shay replied. "And Madeline, file a formal ethics complaint with the State Real Estate Board. If he used any licensed channels to push this, they'll come for him." Madeline nodded. "Already pulling the forms?" Elaine didn't smile. But something about her posture shifted. Attention untwisted. Quiet vindication. "I've started logging everything," she said. "Names, timestamps, screenshots. There's a journal now." Madeline's voice warmed. "Good. Paper beats memory. And this time, he doesn't get to control the version that survives." After the call, Elaine fetched a hardcover notebook she'd used years ago for poetry class. The spine cracked softly as she opened to a fresh page and wrote in careful block print, "Property Control Log, Rutherford Residence." She dated it, logged the first entry, May 14th, 9:43 p.m. Graham's car idling in alleyway, no exit, May 15th, 4:17 a.m. Fraudulent transitional inventory, listing discovered, May 15th, 7:15 a.m. Zoom with Madeline plus legal counsel, action initiated. She flipped to the back of the notebook and began a new section titled, "If this escalates under it," she wrote, Lock deed at county recorder's office alert, HOA of forged listing, secure copies of property insurance docs, request paper deed reissuance with wet signature verification. Before closing the journal, she paused, then added, record statement video, just in case. Elaine looked around her living room. Every picture on the wall, every antique on the shelf, she'd fought for all of it once, through a messy divorce, through years of paying 2 mortgages, through silence from a son who now thought inheritance was a blood right. She picked up her phone and opened the HOA's community board app. The recent posts were nothing more than lost cat notices and lawn fertilizer debates, until she saw it. Does anyone know if Unit 42 is for sale? Spoke to a man last week who said his mother was ready to downsize. Elaine's unit, her address, her life. No name attached, just posted by concerned neighbor. She clicked report post, then flag for legal review. Elaine redraws the lines and dares anyone to cross them. The locksmith arrived just after sunrise. Elaine stood at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed over a thick cardigan, watching as the technician unpacked cables, sensors, and a weatherproof keypad from the back of his van. 2 codes, she said, gesturing toward the wrought iron gate that separated her front walk from the cul-de-sac. 1 for me, 1 for deliveries. I want timestamp logging and video verification before it opens. The man blinked. You're the first person I've met who's actually read the manual on this system. Elaine offered him the faintest of smiles. I've started reading everything. By noon, the new system was active. The old ornamental lock had been replaced with reinforced steel bolts. A keypad glowed softly beside the gate. Cameras on motion sensors now watched both the alley and the front path. Her phone pinged every time something moved. She wasn't being paranoid, she was building evidence. At 3:43 p.m., a white BMW with tinted windows slowed in front of the gate. Elaine watched from inside, mug of tea warm in her hand, blinds drawn only halfway. Her phone vibrated. Motion detected. Front entry facial match, unknown. Male, mid-40s, audio activated. Tap to listen. Elaine tapped. Elaine? A voice called. It's Tyler. Graham asked me to swing by. Just wanted to check if you were okay. Tyler. The financial planner Graham used to bring to Thanksgiving before the divorce papers had even cooled. The one who once called her Elaine the Elegant, while sipping her Chardonnay and subtly rearranging the dinner seating to favor Kelsey's side of the table. She pressed record. Graham said you weren't answering your phone, Tyler continued, trying the gate's latch. It didn't budge. He leaned into the camera. Just thought I'd try in person. We're worried. Elaine's voice was low as she whispered to herself, worried about access. Not about me. She tapped a button on the app. Deny entry. The gate stayed shut. Tyler's face flickered with visible discomfort. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and stood there waiting. After a beat, he raised it and snapped a photo of the keypad. Elaine's phone chimed again. Unauthorized photo capture, logged screenshot, saved to secure cloud folder, visitors, attempts. Tyler eventually turned back toward the car, but before getting in, he muttered something, inaudible to the camera, but enough to cue the system's auto-transcribe. Elaine clicked View on the app. Crazy bitch thinks she owns the damn street now. Elaine's jaw tensed, but her hands were steady as she added the clip to her folder. Access attempts, May 15th. She opened her journal. May 15th, 3:43 p.m. Tyler Benson, confirmed associate of Graham, attempted entry. No code provided. Verbal derogatory remark captured, screenshot and transcript saved. She closed the book, then opened another app, one that let her sync video clips with timestamps and notes. Each day her evidence grew more organized, more irrefutable. That night she added a new device to the perimeter, a voice-activated intercom tied directly to Madeline's office line. If anyone tried to sweet-talk their way in, they'd get redirected to a lawyer with a faster tongue. Elaine slept with her phone beside her pillow and her legal folder on the nightstand. She was not scared. She was documenting. Flashback. Her ex-husband had once tried to hide a tax lien during their divorce, claimed it was an accounting misfire. She'd pulled every document herself, color-coded the lies, and walked into mediation with 3 binders and a voice recorder. She won. Quietly. Completely. Now Elaine looked around her home. The silence wasn't threatening anymore. It was hers. Until... Motion detected. Rear perimeter, 1 a.m. Body detected. Cloaked. No face match. Gate was not triggered. She clicked the feed. The shadow moved quickly across the backyard fence. Not Graham, not Tyler, someone else. Then a loud clink. Elaine stops defending. She begins striking back. The sound came again. Sharp metal on metal. Clink. Then silence. Elaine sat frozen in the dark of her bedroom, one hand gripping her phone, the other resting on the drawer that housed her registered Smith & Wesson .38. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. The camera feed had gone black. The side angle still held. Grainy, static-riddled, but clear enough to show the faint glint of a wristwatch disappearing behind her hydrangeas. She waited. Then, calmly, she picked up her phone and texted Madeline. 1:08 a.m. Elaine, we're not dealing with whispers anymore. It's time. Madeline. 3 dots pulsing. Madeline. Understood. I'll draft the counterclaim in the morning. You're not the only one keeping records. By noon, Elaine was seated across from Madeline in her downtown office, a manila envelope thick with surveillance photos and transcripts spread across the table like evidence at trial. Financial coercion, Madeline said as she typed. Attempted unauthorized transactions, psychological harassment, false property listing, and now attempted intimidation. We've got pattern, persistence, and probable cause. Elaine handed over the new printout, a screenshot of her home's Zillow entry, uploaded the night before, without her consent. I want him named, she said. In the filing, not my son. Graham Rutherford. Let him be searchable. Madeline didn't flinch. He will be. They worked in silence for a long stretch. Elaine reviewed the affidavit for accuracy, striking only one line. Victim states she is frightened for her safety. I'm not frightened, she said, crossing it out in ink, just finished being tolerant. Flashback. It was Graham's graduation dinner, one of those overpriced rooftop places with craft cocktails and shared plates. Elaine had worn a new blouse, blue silk with delicate buttons she couldn't quite fasten with one hand. Graham had introduced her as the woman who taught me what passive aggression looks like and how to outshop anyone during a recession. Everyone had laughed. Kelsey had clinked a glass. Elaine had smiled. But when she excused herself to the restroom, she sat in the stall for 6 minutes and stared at her shoes. They were new. She never wore them again. Now, at 3:17 p.m., Madeline hit send on the filing with the family court clerk. Within 2 hours, the docket confirmed the motion. Cross-petition, elder exploitation, and undue influence. Rutherford versus Rutherford. Elaine stood and straightened her blazer. She had opted for navy, not black. She was not in mourning. What happens next? She asked. Madeline slid a stack of papers into a folder and handed it to her. We wait for the judge to review and issue the protection order. But if he so much as breathes near your mailbox before then, we file for expedited review. Elaine didn't say thank you. She nodded. The kind of nod women give each other when something irreversible has begun. It took less than 3 days. Elaine sat alone on the wooden bench outside Courtroom 2C, her journal in her lap, the affidavit copy tucked neatly inside. Across the hall, Graham leaned against the wall beside his attorney, some kid in a slim gray suit who looked like he'd only recently stopped asking permission to stay out past curfew. Graham wouldn't look at her. The bailiff called their names. Inside, the courtroom was mostly empty. It wasn't a trial, not yet, but it was official. It was real. Elaine stood when prompted. Her voice did not waver. When the judge asked if she had supporting documentation, she simply handed over the envelope. Photos, emails, audio transcripts, property filings, the cognitive exam, her name written over and over again with clear purpose. The judge's brow furrowed only once, at the photo of the backyard figure near the disabled camera. This is substantial, he said. Protection order is granted for 90 days. Mr. Rutherford, you are prohibited from all in-person or electronic contact with the petitioner and from accessing her residence or financial accounts in any capacity. Graham's lawyer objected on form. The judge silenced him with one look. Elaine did not turn to face her son. She didn't have to. She already knew the look that would be there. It wasn't anger. It was disbelief. He had never imagined she would fight. Outside, Elaine walked into the light like someone arriving home. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think this ends in court? You don't know what I know. Elaine chooses legacy over lineage and memory over manipulation. Elaine stared at the message on her screen. No name, just a burner email and the subject line. Let's settle this privately. No more court, just us. Attached, a scanned document, terms scribbled in legalese, half-baked and arrogant. Graham's fingerprints were all over it. A proposed reconciliation agreement that included monthly access to a family trust, health coverage retroactively demanded, and, at the bottom, a gag clause. Confidentiality in exchange for peace. She didn't open the PDF. Instead, she printed it, then placed it beneath a thick legal envelope marked Final Amendments. Estate. She didn't shred the proposal. It would serve a different purpose now, proof that silence had a price, and that she refused to pay it. Madeline arrived 15 minutes later, a notary public in tow. They sat at Elaine's dining table beneath a pendant light that cast soft golden rings onto the documents between them. "You're sure?" Madeline asked, her pen already uncapped. Elaine's eyes didn't leave the page. "He's not my legacy. He's my lesson." The official letter was 3 paragraphs long, firm, unsentimental. It revoked all previous designations, explicitly excluded Graham Rutherford from any claims to financial assets, property, or end-of-life decisions. It appointed a trustee from the women's housing nonprofit Elaine had quietly supported for a decade. Madeline handed the letter to the notary, who stamped each page with quiet finality. Elaine signed, a clean stroke, no hesitation. Flashback. Elaine was 49, in the infusion chair wearing a knit cap, her hands trembling from steroids and residual terror. Her mouth tasted like rust. Graham, only 19, sat beside her, holding her hand so tightly her knuckles ached. "I'm not leaving," he whispered. "Ever. You're my mom." She had closed her eyes then, afraid the look on her face might reveal that she believed him. Later, she'd ask him to drive her home. He'd said he had a study group. She called a cab. Now Elaine walked Madeline and the notary to the door. The wind outside had picked up, stirring the hydrangeas that still bore the marks from that shadowed night. Before they left, Madeline turned to her. "There's one more thing," she said. "Would you consider issuing a formal public statement? For the trust's records and, if needed, for media control later?" Elaine considered it, then nodded once. "Send me a blank template," she said. "I'll write the words myself." Madeline smiled. "I never doubted that." When the door clicked shut, Elaine returned to the table, poured a single glass of wine, Pinot Noir, not too cold, and carried it into the living room. The night was still young, but something inside her had gone very still. Settled. Sealed. She reached for the remote and flipped through channels until she found a documentary on war memorials. The screen filled with women in aged uniforms, saluting with quiet, unapologetic pride. She whispered, half to herself, half to the ghosts in her bones, "You can lose everything, and still not be lost." Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She didn't look this time. She turned it face down. The next morning, she drove to the county recorder's office. Parking in the senior reserved space, she stepped out in a pressed blazer and sensible flats. She moved slowly but without uncertainty, like someone carrying weight she'd finally chosen to bear. Inside, she handed the clerk a sealed envelope. "Addendum to estate," she said, voice clear, "and official. Witness signature. File it today." The clerk glanced at the document and her ID, then looked up. "Want a copy for yourself?" Elaine shook her head. "Number just a receipt. I don't plan on needing a backup." Back in the car, she sat for a moment before starting the ignition, then her phone buzzed again. This time, not a message. A photo, sent from an encrypted app. Graham standing in front of her gate, Smiling. Caption, "Doesn't feel like goodbye yet. Not all forgiveness is owed. Not all letters need sending." The photo sat on her phone's screen for hours. Graham, at the gate, smiling like a man who'd just walked away from a house fire and expected applause. Elaine didn't forward it. Not to Madeline, not to the retired judge, not to her brother. Not yet. Instead, she saved the image, titled it "Final Recognition," and locked it behind biometric authentication. Then she powered the phone off, placed it face down on the kitchen counter, and opened the drawer beneath the sink. Inside, between rubber gloves and a roll of trash bags, sat a plain manila folder marked "Letters Never Sent." She hadn't touched it in years. That night, with a single lamp burning beside her and a wool throw wrapped around her shoulders, Elaine pulled a fresh sheet of stationery from her drawer. Heavy, textured paper. She hadn't bought it for correspondence. It was for clarity. For exorcism. She dated the top, June 2nd, then began to write, "Dear Graham, not everything I didn't say was forgiveness. I wonder sometimes if you ever realized that. I've replayed it all lately. Moments I could have stopped you, taught you better, called out the small lies that calcified into character. But I didn't. I let you grow past me, around me, without me. Not because I was weak, but because I was tired. Tired of defending a version of motherhood that always demanded I be the one to blink first. You used to hold my hand like you were anchoring us both. Now you treat me like the house that holds your forgotten things, valuable only when someone else wants them. You became the kind of man your father once warned me you'd never forgive, and yet part of me still hopes. Not for reconciliation, for reckoning. You're still my son, but I am no longer your foundation. If one day you choose to be better, to be decent, not for gain, not for image, I hope someone is still around to witness it. It just won't be me. Mom." Her hand trembled only once, on the final M. She set the pen down, folded the letter, and sealed it inside the envelope marked "Unsent, Unneeded." She placed it back in the drawer and closed it, gently. The next morning, Elaine walked into the office of North River Transitional Housing with a check in her bag and her mother's obituary clipped to the donation form. The woman behind the front desk looked up, surprised. "Are you here to tour the facility?" Elaine smiled. "Number, I'm here to fund it." She handed the check over, 5 figures, handwritten, signed with a steadier hand than anything Graham had seen in years. "In my mother's name," Elaine said softly. "Margaret Jensen. She never had a second chance. Maybe someone else should." The woman blinked, eyes suddenly glassy. I can walk you through our naming process if you'd like. We often inscribe donors' dedications in the courtyard tiles." Elaine nodded, then paused. "No plaque," she said. "No signature. Just one sentence." The woman waited, pen poised. Elaine said, "A quiet room and a door that locks." That's what she always wanted. That evening, she returned home to another envelope tucked into her gatepost. No address, no stamp. Inside, a photocopy of a notice of intent to reopen trust discussion, unsigned, legally toothless, symbolically desperate. She walked it straight to her fire pit in the backyard. No hesitation this time. The flame curled its edges inward until the center collapsed in on itself. No smoke alarm, no fanfare, just ash and truth. As she walked back inside, the security camera blinked red. Motion logged. She checked the feed. Nothing visible, just wind. Then, on the camera's audio pickup, a whisper, a voice she hadn't heard since her diagnosis 2 decades ago. "You weren't wrong. You were just too early." Some doors close with a slam, others with a lock and quiet resolve. Elaine sat at the kitchen table, the last words of the whisper still echoing in her head. "You weren't wrong. You were just too early." She didn't flinch. She didn't chase ghosts. She opened her laptop instead. The security clip was already archived, time-stamped, logged, filed. The audio enhancement app she'd purchased months earlier was processing the whisper, but it didn't matter. She knew that voice, knew it wasn't possible. And yet, Graham had always known how to mimic things. Stories, sympathy, even, once, his father's apologies. Elaine clicked forward and sent the audio clip to Madeline without subject line or note, just the raw, unnerving fact of it. Then she opened her phone and searched her email, history for Graham Rutherford. Dozens of threads surfaced. She selected the most recent one, clicked forward, and typed just 2 words: finalize everything. By noon, Madeline had responded with an attachment labeled Property Lockdown Protocol, Final Draft. Elaine read each clause twice, then clicked to sign. Clause 4 was her favorite. No beneficiary, heir, or descendant shall assume future legal interest in the property without written reauthorization by the primary trustee, Elaine M. Rutherford, living or posthumous. She imagined Graham reading that, imagined the tight knot in his throat, familiar now, like entitlement hitting a locked door. The HOA board followed suit. After reviewing Elaine's complaint and digital logs, they issued a formal violation notice to Graham: unlawful solicitation of property interest, repeat appearance on private premises following legal no-contact order, behavior deemed hostile and manipulative per community bylaws. The email from the HOA president was short, clipped. We've posted notice to the shared directory. Let us know if he tries anything again. Your footage was thorough. Elaine only replied, "Thank you. I intend to remain so." That evening she walked the perimeter of her home. Just her. No phone, no folder. She checked each gate, each camera light. Everything was in place. The house, for once, felt like armor, not a relic. Inside, she lit a single candle on the windowsill and placed a small object beside it, her mother's locket, long since emptied of photos. It wasn't a shrine, it was a marker, a place where silence had finally earned its dignity. Flashback: Elaine and Graham had once argued over her garage door code. He was 22, fresh out of grad school, already drunk on someone else's money. "You should just trust me with it," he said, arms crossed. "I'm your family." Elaine had written the code on a sticky note and placed it on the fridge. The next morning, it was gone, and so were her savings bonds. She'd never changed the locks, until now. Her phone buzzed once, not a message, just an automated push notification: digital estate freeze complete, beneficiary Graham Rutherford, revoked. Elaine exhaled. Then, almost ceremonially, she walked to the small drawer beneath her hallway mirror. Inside, a worn photo of her, Graham, and her late husband on a beach in Maine. The frame was chipped. The smile on Graham's face was young, wild, free of calculation. She turned it over and peeled off the backing. Removed the photo, cut it straight down the middle with a letter opener. She kept her half. The other she placed gently in the trash. At exactly 10:04 p.m., her phone pinged with a motion alert. She opened the app. The front camera lit up with a familiar face. Kelsey, standing alone at the gate. No flowers, no phone, just a legal envelope in one hand, trembling slightly. Elaine tapped audio. Kelsey's voice was ragged. I'm not here to fight," she said. "I'm here because I didn't know everything, and I think I'm next." Elaine didn't reply. She just watched. Because some people don't deserve a warning. They deserve a mirror. Sometimes power isn't restored. It's reclaimed, allowed. The community center conference room was lit with the kind of buzzing fluorescence that made everyone look a little older. Folding chairs creaked under the weight of stories not yet spoken. The event flyer had called it Legacy, Law, and Letting Go, Navigating Late-Life Autonomy. Elaine had almost deleted the invitation, but Madeline had quietly nudged her. "There's a panel for anonymous testimonies," she'd said. "You can say what you need to say without giving them what they want." Elaine had asked, "Who's them?" Madeline replied, "Anyone who still thinks silence is safer than story." Now, seated third from the left behind a simple cloth-draped table, Elaine wore a navy blazer and a pin that read only, "First wife, last word." No last name, no bio. Just that. The moderator introduced her as a retired academic, independent homeowner, and long-term caregiver turned litigant. Elaine adjusted the mic. It clicked softly. "I'm not here for catharsis," she began, voice even. "I'm here for record." There was no trembling, no apology wrapped in a story. She didn't scan the crowd for sympathy, she just told it straight. I was the first wife, the first to pay, to protect, to raise, and later, to be rewritten. A few heads nodded. I held my son's hand through illness. I signed every school form. I funded his dreams when his father couldn't be bothered to remember the name of his major. A woman in the second row wiped her eyes, but as soon as my name no longer benefited his resume, I became context, a footnote. Convenient when the estate was on the line, dismissible when dignity was. Elaine paused. I changed my trust. I changed my locks. But what I never expected was that I'd need to change the myth. A sharp inhale came from the back of the room. Myth? The moderator asked gently. Elaine nodded. The myth that blood entitles you to legacy, or that aging turns your story into communal property. There was silence, and then a quiet sob. A woman stood up, tears already streaking her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she whispered. My son did this too, took my house, said I wasn't fit to manage a sprinkler system. A few people laughed, but it was hollow, sharp. The woman clutched a manila envelope. I came here to see if I should file a protection order, but now, her voice cracked. Now I think I need to write my own damn trust. The room clapped. A few women stood with her. Elaine didn't smile, but her spine straightened a notch at a time. Because this wasn't just defense. This was defense with audience. After the panel, a line of women waited quietly to speak to her. Some shook her hand. Some didn't speak at all. One slipped her a note that said, "He called me a relic. Now I call myself free." Elaine tucked it into her purse. Outside, the air was heavy with dusk. Gold spilled across the sidewalk like spilled honey. She walked to her car with unhurried grace, keys already in hand. Her phone buzzed. From Madeline Subject, FYI, you've been quoted. Attached, a screenshot from a local journalist's article on the panel. The quote in bold, I was the first wife, the first to pay, to protect, to raise, and later, to be rewritten. Anonymous panelist, first wife, last word. Elaine stared at the screen, then tapped Save to Archive. As she started her car, the dashboard lit up, and the radio, set to public radio, was mid-segment. A recent uptick in elder protection cases tied to intergenerational coercion. Our next guest, a retired judge who says one woman's story changed how she views survivorship entirely. Elaine didn't recognize the voice, but she knew the ripple. Some apologies don't knock. They linger, just beyond the threshold. The security app chimed at 7:41 a.m. Not the usual motion ping, a sustained trigger, prolonged presence. Elaine was already up, robe belted tight, coffee steeping in silence. She picked up her phone, thumbed open the camera feed, and froze. There he was, Graham, standing just outside the gate. His hair was unkempt, face pale, wearing the same designer coat she'd once found a receipt for tucked into her birthday card. He looked thinner, or just less inflated. He wasn't moving, just waiting. Elaine set her coffee down and tapped for audio. Mom! His voice cracked through the static, tinny and too familiar. I know you're watching. She didn't respond. The mic stayed muted. I was angry, he said, hands shoved deep into his pockets. And stupid. I thought I could scare you into negotiating. I don't know what I thought. Elaine's eyes didn't leave the screen. The camera angle cut his figure at the waist, like a painting missing the frame. Graham shifted his weight, glancing once at the keypad but didn't touch it. I've been going to therapy, he added. They said I should acknowledge harm, be accountable. A dry laugh escaped him. They didn't say what to do when your mom hires better lawyers than your firm has partners. Elaine blinked slowly. Her thumb hovered over the speak button, then moved away. I saw the article, he continued. The quote, that was you, right? First wife, last word? You always did love a headline. No smile came, not even inside. Graham rubbed his face. Kelsey left. Said I need to detangle my own ego before I wrap it around someone else. Her words, not mine. Silence stretched. Elaine counted it in heartbeats. Look, I'm not here for money. I swear. He looked up toward the house, eyes searching the windows. "I miss my mother." That landed, not as pain, as pressure, as familiarity, just enough to test the seams of her resolve. Elaine leaned in closer to the screen. Graham added, "I brought the watch back." He held it up, her late husband's old timepiece, the one Graham had pocketed from her drawer years ago. Its gold face glinted against the morning light, too polished, too late. Elaine's eyes narrowed. Graham placed the watch gently on the top step outside the gate. Then he stepped back, hands raised, as if surrendering to something invisible. "I'll go," he said quietly. "But if you ever think there's space for truth, I'll answer." And then, almost like punctuation, he added, "You once told me that survival isn't the same as peace. You were right, and I don't want to survive like this anymore." He turned, walked away, didn't run. Elaine stayed frozen for a long time. The camera auto-timed out, but she reopened the feed, rewatched it. Once, then again. She rose, walked to the front door, unlatched it, and opened it a crack. The watch was still there, sitting like a quiet dare. She didn't pick it up. She closed the door, not fast, not dramatic, just closed it. Back inside, she wrote a new journal entry. June 4th, 7:41 a.m. Subject appeared at gate. Verbally acknowledged coercive intent. Offered symbolic item. No direct threat. No attempt to enter. Statement recorded. No reply issued. She tucked the journal back into the drawer, locked it, and then opened her laptop. A new email had arrived. Subject, panelist follow-up, interview request, body. "We believe your story could help change legislation. Are you willing to go public, fully, name, photo, everything?" Elaine didn't respond. Not yet. She just stared at the screen and whispered aloud. "Power isn't a moment. It's what you choose to do the moment after. Closure isn't quiet because it's small. It's quiet because it's done." The table was set for 6. Real linen napkins, water glasses, not stemware. Elaine had cooked herself, rosemary chicken, soft rolls, roasted root vegetables, comfort food for women who'd been asked to bite their tongues for too many years. Marjorie arrived first, still in her blazer from a zoning meeting. Then Camille, who ran the shelter's legal hotline now. And Ruth, who once lived across the hall in Elaine's first apartment, back when they both shared a toaster and a habit of over-watering basil. Each brought something small, a jar of honey, a chocolate bar, a hand cream sample tucked into a grocery bag. The gifts were less about occasion and more about presence, their kind of shorthand. When everyone was seated, Elaine raised her glass, iced tea, not wine, and tapped the rim with the tip of her spoon. "I'm not one for toasts," she said, "but today, I'll read something instead." She opened a slim folder and pulled out 2 pages. Her new estate summary, drafted, signed, notarized, filed, but never yet spoken aloud. "My home will transfer to the North River Women's Collective. My savings are designated for rotating transitional housing grants, administered by trustees with no familial relation. My possessions will be auctioned. Proceeds divided evenly between local support initiatives for survivors of financial abuse, elder exploitation, and post-divorce isolation. There is no beneficiary from bloodline, legal or implied." The room fell into a hush, no applause, no disbelief, just a kind of stillness that comes when a boundary gets blessed. Elaine flipped to the final paragraph. "Final declaration," she read aloud. "Love is not a legal claim. Respect is. If you cannot honor me while I'm living, you cannot inherit me when I'm gone." Someone let out a breath they hadn't realized they'd been holding. Marjorie reached across the table, hand gentle on Elaine's wrist. "That's not a will," she said. "That's scripture." They ate, talked about the panel, the news article. The email Elaine hadn't answered yet. Ruth asked if she would, if she'd finally let herself be known. "I don't know," Elaine said honestly. "Maybe." After dessert, just cookies from a bakery downtown, everyone filtered out slowly, one by one. Long hugs, no parting advice, just gratitude that felt earned. By 4:30, Elaine stood alone again in her foyer, arms crossed loosely, surveying the house. She'd never thought of it as hers before, not entirely. It had always been shared, first with a husband who wrote checks like apologies, then with a child who measured love by leverage. Now it was quiet, and fully claimed. She walked to her study, opened the drawer, removed the photo of her and Graham, cut clean down the center weeks ago, and placed her half inside the estate folder. A record of what had been salvaged. Then, slowly, she walked to the front door. She locked it, bolted it, and taped a small handwritten sign on the outside pane. Owner lives here. Uninvited names do not. She stepped back, read it, nodded. That night she sat on her porch with the lights dimmed and the air just cool enough to wrap around her like memory. Her mother's locket rested against her collarbone, light as a punctuation mark. The security system pinged once, just wind. She didn't check it. Instead, she opened her laptop. The email from the journalist was still there. Subject, "Will you go on record?" Elaine clicked reply, typed just one sentence, then deleted it, then typed another, and hit send. Yes, but not as victim, as warning. The screen went black. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. Inside, everything remained still and locked. And finally, her own. Let me know if you'd like a title page, story-wide proofing pass, or formatting for submission or print. It's been a hell of a journey.